the importance of racial and cultural differences in your own identity.
Be proud of your cultural background because this will help you navigate through the educational system and to be confident in your abilities as a student of color.
Surround yourself with a group of people you trust and will seek for guidance.
Be a part of diverse groups as well as dominantly white groups. Inequality of resources keep people of color at the bottom due to racial hierarchies.
Students of color have a different perspective about a university rather than a white student due to finances, resources, and lack of support.
And institutional racism is a system based on inequality based on race. So it can occur in institutions and schools. And for example, we see this where a white male is favored in a job over a person of color.
Prejudices in students of color are prejudged not based on actual reason or actual experience. Some structural obstacles that students of color may face in elementary schools.
The first one would be inequality of resources. So the distribution of resources like books, computers, and internet access is different in different schools. And also stereotyping is something that students often face. So teachers might often think that students of color might not go to college because they are Latino.
Which leads me to the point of the banking method that most elementary students encounter with the idea that teachers fill the students with information and the students simply come to accept it.
Other obstacles that they may face would be deficit thinking or color blindness. Deficit thinking is teachers holding lower expectations for students of color with demographics that do not fit the traditional context of the school system. So for example, teachers would treat students of color differently than the dominant group, which is white students. Also, color blindness is when teachers don't see any color and treat all the students the same when we aren't the same. Some advice that we can give you as students of color at the University of Utah to conquer some of these structural obstacles would be:
the first one would be try not to internalize the negative stereotypes. So instead of doing that, deconstruct it and find your strengths, and that will help you attain higher education.
Teachers should include the students' culture within their curriculum. We have the example of Jackson Elementary that welcomes the notion of bilingual involvement within the institute.
And lastly, be aware that you are a student of color and you may go through some of these obstacles through your educational career. So in other words, you should be color conscious.
Some of the things that we learned from our mentees is,
so the first thing I've learned is that I had a class at Jackson in my first semester, and then I have a Bryant class this time. And the difference between the two classes was that the elementary students still haven't internalized that negative stereotype, so they still believe that they can go to college, and they want to be doctors, lawyers. And when I went to Bryant, these kids have internalized that negative stereotype, so a lot of the times they believe that they won't be able to go to college, and they think that they're not smart enough for it. So I think just believing in them will really help them be able to want to go to college. So just believing in them is a big factor.
So at Bryant Middle School, I came to encounter a similar situation as that, but I feel like one of the biggest influences is the presence of a college student motivates the student to actually do their work and do what they're supposed to be doing in school.
To conclude, we want to conclude with a quote by former Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun, who stated, "In order to get beyond racism, we must first take account of race. There is no other way, and in order to treat some persons equally, we must treat them differently."
Thank you.
Hola, me llamo Rosita, me dicen mamacita porque soy latina. I say brown pride, demostrándola mi raza, que sí se puede, yeah girl, that's right. I made it to the U, and no I ain't white, but I keep it tight, and believe me when I say what I'm doing is right. I ain't as smart as you, yeah right. They say you educated, pero nos dices wet back, ¿qué? Take it back to England, girl, get it right. If you're educated, Mexican American, hasta la muerte.